I am Ryan Matthews, 31 years old. For my entire life, my father told me that I didn't have what it took to be a real businessman, that I was too idealistic, too soft, too focused on technology instead of profit margins. He said I'd never understand what it meant to build something that mattered. But the worst humiliation didn't come from those conversations behind closed doors. It came on a Tuesday morning in San Francisco, in the glass-walled conference room on the 42nd floor of the building that housed the company I had built from nothing. Right in the middle of the acquisition announcement, with 12 board members, 8 investors, and the entire executive team of Axiom Technologies watching, my father stood at the head of the table and pointed to the press release on the screen behind him. He said, and I quote, "This is why we brought in real leadership 6 months ago. Ryan's vision was admirable, but vision doesn't close billion-dollar deals. Starting today, Ryan will be transitioning out of his role as CTO. We've decided to move in a different direction." The room went silent. People shifted in their expensive Herman Miller chairs. A few investors checked their phones. My mother, sitting 3 seats to my father's right in her Chanel suit, sipped her coffee and examined the press release like it was fascinating literature. The new CEO, Marcus Thornhill, brought in by my parents to professionalize the company, smiled that shark smile and nodded approvingly. My father looked at me like I was an intern who'd overstayed his welcome. They had no idea that the idealistic dreamer they just fired was the sole copyright holder of the core algorithm that powered every single product Axiom Technologies had just agreed to acquire for $1.2 billion. I was the only person who could make that deal completely collapse. And in exactly 72 hours, they were going to find out exactly what happens when you steal someone's life's work and forget to check who actually owns it. If you've ever built something with your own hands only to watch someone else take credit for it, if you've ever been told you're not good enough by the very people who should believe in you most, I need you to hit that like button right now. Let's show every person who ever underestimated us exactly what we're capable of. Drop a comment that says, "I built this," and let's create a wall of creators who refuse to be erased. The conference room smelled like expensive cologne and fresh coffee from the espresso machine in the corner. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown San Francisco, the bay glittering in the morning sun 42 stories below. The long table was solid walnut, surrounded by leather chairs that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I sat at the far end, my laptop closed in front of me, watching my father perform. David Matthews, 63 years old, silver hair perfectly styled, navy suit that probably cost $5,000. He'd made his fortune in private equity, buying and selling companies like they were trading cards. He was good at it, ruthless, efficient, and he'd never forgiven me for choosing to build something instead of buying it. 6 months ago, he and my mother had exercised their board voting power to bring in Marcus Thornhill as CEO. They'd positioned it as helping Ryan scale. They said I was too focused on product, not enough on business. They promised I'd still have control of the technology. That was the first lie. Marcus was 48, Harvard MBA, 3 successful exits under his belt. He wore designer glasses and expensive watches and talked in corporate buzzwords that meant nothing. Synergies, strategic pivots, stakeholder value optimization. He'd spent 6 months systematically removing my authority, my team, my decision-making power. And now this, the announcement. Axiom Technologies, a massive conglomerate that bought promising startups and gutted them for parts, was acquiring Nebula Systems, my company, the company I'd started in my apartment 7 years ago with 3 credit cards and a dream, for $1.2 billion. My father clicked to the next slide. The deal closes in 30 days. Marcus will continue as CEO. The executive team remains intact, and we're excited to announce that Axiom has committed to a significant expansion of our enterprise division. Applause, polite, professional. Marcus stood up. I want to thank David and Catherine Matthews for their vision in bringing me on board 6 months ago.
This acquisition represents validation of everything we've built together. Together, like I didn't exist. As David mentioned, we'll be transitioning Ryan out of his operational role. He's done excellent work laying the foundation, but we need someone with enterprise experience to take the technology to the next level. We've already identified a replacement CTO from Axiom's existing team. More applause. I sat very still, my hands folded on the table, my face neutral. I'd learned a long time ago not to show emotion in rooms like this, not to give them the satisfaction. My mother caught my eye from across the table. She smiled, small, patronizing, the smile she'd given me my entire life when she was about to tell me something for my own good. After the meeting, she cornered me by the elevators. "Ryan, honey, you understand this is what's best, right? You're brilliant with code, but you're not a businessman. You never were. We're setting you up with a generous severance package, $2 million. That's more than fair." "I built this company," I said quietly. "You built the initial product," she corrected. "My father and I built the business. We brought in the investors. We recruited the talent. We made this acquisition happen. You should be grateful we're including you in the payout at all." Grateful. Yes, grateful. Do you have any idea how many founders get completely shut out when their companies get acquired? We're being generous. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. She stepped inside, pressed the button for the lobby, and gave me one more smile. "I'll have legal send over the transition paperwork. Sign it by Friday. And Ryan, try to be gracious about this. It's unbecoming to pout." The doors closed. I stood there for a long moment, staring at my reflection in the polished steel. 31 years old, 5'10", dark hair that needed a haircut, wearing jeans and a hoodie in a building full of suits because I'd never cared about playing the part they wanted me to play. I pulled out my phone and opened my encrypted email. Sent a message to my lawyer, Jennifer Chen, one of the best intellectual property attorneys in Silicon Valley and one of the few people I actually trusted. Subject, urgent, need to meet today. They just announced my termination, selling to Axiom Technologies for $1.2 billion. Deal closes in 30 days. They don't know about the copyright assignment agreement. What's our move? Her response came back in under a minute. My office, 2 p.m. Bring everything. I took the elevator down to the 38th floor, to the corner office that used to be mine, and now Marcus's. My access card still worked. The door was unlocked. I walked in without knocking. Marcus was on the phone, feet up on the desk, laughing at something. He saw me and waved dismissively. "Yeah, I gotta go. Call you later." He hung up. "Marcus, come to say goodbye to your office?" Something like that. "Look, no hard feelings, right? This is just business. You're a great engineer, but you're not cut out for the C-suite. We both know it." "Do we?" "Come on, you spent 6 months fighting every decision I made. You questioned every hire. You refused to prioritize the features that would actually make us money. You wanted to build some idealistic platform that empowered users instead of maximizing revenue. That's not how you build a billion-dollar company." "I built a billion-dollar company," I said evenly. "You just sold it." He laughed. "You built a prototype. I built a business. There's a difference." He leaned back in the chair, my chair. "Your severance package is generous. Take the money. Go start another company. Do the whole founder thing again. But this time, maybe let the adults handle the business side from the beginning." "The adults," I repeated. "Yeah, people who understand how this world actually works." He gestured at the window, at the city below. "This isn't your garage anymore, Ryan. This is the real game. And in the real game, the people with the money make the decisions." I looked at him for a long moment, memorizing his face, the smug certainty, the complete confidence that he'd won. "You're right," I said. "The people with the money make the decisions." "Exactly. So sign your papers, take your payout, and move on. That's my advice." "I appreciate it," I said. I walked out of his office and took the elevator to the ground floor, walked out into the San Francisco afternoon. The sun was bright. The city hummed with energy. People rushed past on their way to meetings, to lunches, to lives that didn't include watching their parents steal everything they'd built. I walked 3 blocks to a coffee shop called Ritual, ordered an espresso, sat down at a corner table, and opened my laptop. Pulled up the file I'd been keeping for 7 years, the one I'd updated every 6 months, the one that documented every line of code I'd written for Nebula Systems before it became a company, the one that proved beyond any legal doubt that I owned the intellectual property. The core algorithm, the one that powered everything, the recommendation engine, the data processing pipeline, the machine learning models, all of it, written by me, copyrighted to me personally, licensed to Nebula Systems under an agreement that explicitly stated the license could be revoked if I was terminated without cause. I set it up that way 7 years ago on the advice of my college mentor, Professor Sarah Kim, who'd seen too many student founders get screwed by investors. She told me, protect your work, always, because the second
you don't, someone will take it. I'd listened. And now, 28 days before Axiom Technologies was supposed to close on a $1.2 billion acquisition, they were about to discover that the technology they thought they were buying didn't actually belong to the company they were acquiring. It belonged to me, and I'd just been terminated without cause. I pulled up Jennifer's number and called. "You're early," she said. "I'm at Ritual Coffee. Can you meet me here instead?" "Give me 20 minutes." She arrived in 15. Jennifer Chen was 42, whip-smart, with a reputation for destroying opposing counsel in IP litigation. She wore a gray suit and carried a leather briefcase that probably contained enough legal firepower to level a city block. She sat down across from me. "Show me everything." I turned my laptop around. She read for 10 minutes, scrolling through the documents, the emails, the copyright registrations. Her expression didn't change, but I saw her eyes sharpen. Finally, she looked up. "Ryan, do you understand what you have here?" "I think so." "No, I don't think you do." She leaned forward. "You have a nuclear weapon. You have the ability to completely destroy this acquisition, to potentially bankrupt Nebula Systems, to expose your parents and Marcus to massive liability. Do you understand the implications of that?" "Yes." "And you're sure you want to do this? Because once we pull this trigger, there's no going back. Your parents will never forgive you. The tech community will have opinions. This will get ugly." I thought about my father's face in that conference room, my mother's patronizing smile, Marcus calling me a child. I thought about 7 years of building something I believed in, only to watch it get stolen by people who saw it as nothing more than a line item on a balance sheet. "I'm sure," I said. Jennifer nodded slowly. Then she smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a lawyer who was about to ruin someone's entire year. "Okay then," she said. "Let's show them what happens when you forget to read the fine print." This is where the story shifts, isn't it? The moment where you stop being the victim and start being the architect of your own justice. If you've ever had to fight back against people who underestimated you, if you've ever had to prove your worth to people who should have seen it all along, hit that like button. Tell me in the comments, what's the moment you decided to stop playing nice and start playing to win? Let's celebrate the turning points. My mind drifted back to 7 years earlier, to the moment that had started everything. I was 24 years old, sitting in my childhood home in Palo Alto during Christmas dinner. The dining room was decorated with expensive wreaths and designer candles, the table set with china that my mother only brought out for special occasions. My parents were there, my older brother Derek and his wife Amanda, my grandmother who'd flown in from Boston. Derek had just announced his promotion, Vice President of Corporate Development at Goldman Sachs, New York office, 7-figure salary, bonus structure that would set him up for life. My father raised his glass. To Derek, my son who finally understood what it means to build real wealth, who chose the path of stability and success instead of chasing pipe dreams. Everyone drank, congratulated Derek, asked him about the new position, the Manhattan apartment he was buying, the life he was building. I sat at the end of the table, picking at my food. My mother turned to me. "And Ryan, what are you up to these days?" "I'm working on something, a recommendation algorithm. I think it could change how people discover content online." My father laughed, not kindly. "Another algorithm. That's nice, Ryan. Very hobbyist of you." "It's not a hobby.
I've been building a prototype. I think there's real potential here." Potential, my father repeated, like it was a dirty word. "You know what has potential? A steady job, a 401k, a career path, not tinkering in your apartment with code that nobody will ever use." "David," my mother said gently, touching his arm, "let's not start." "I'm not starting anything. I'm trying to help our son understand reality. Ryan, you're 24 years old. You have a computer science degree from Stanford. You could work at Google, at Facebook, at any number of companies that would pay you a real salary. Instead, you're living in a studio apartment in the Mission, eating ramen, working on projects that go nowhere." "They don't go nowhere," I said quietly. "Name one project you finished, one thing you've actually shipped, that people actually use." I couldn't. He knew I couldn't. "That's what I thought," he said. "You're brilliant, Ryan. Nobody denies that. But brilliance without execution is just expensive daydreaming. And frankly, your mother and I are getting tired of watching you waste your potential." My brother jumped in, trying to help. "Ryan, what Dad's trying to say is that there's nothing wrong with working for a big company first. Build up some savings, get some experience, then maybe start your own thing." "I don't want to work for a big company. I want to build something that matters." "Then build it," he said. "But don't expect us to keep supporting your lifestyle while you figure it out." "I'm not asking you to support me." "Really? Who paid for your Stanford tuition? Who gave you the money for your first apartment? Who's been helping with your health insurance? At some point, Ryan, you need to grow up and contribute to your own life." The table went quiet. My grandmother spoke up. "David, the boy is trying. The boy is 24 years old. He's not a boy anymore. He's a man who needs to make man's decisions." Then came the gifts. After dinner, we moved to the living room. My mother handed out presents from under the tree. Expensive gifts, carefully selected, wrapped in professional paper. Derek and Amanda opened theirs first. A check, $50,000. "For the down payment on your apartment," my mother said warmly. "We're so proud of you." Derek hugged them both. "Thank you. This means everything." Then it was my turn. My father handed me an envelope. "This is for you, Ryan." I opened it. Inside was a brochure for a career counseling service and a note in my father's handwriting. "It's time to get serious. This service will help you find a real job. Merry Christmas." I stared at it, at the brochure, at the note. "It's expensive," my mother added. "Top-tier service. They place people at Fortune 500 companies. Your father pulled strings to get you an appointment. They're booked up for months normally." "Thanks," I managed. But what I was thinking was, Derek gets $50,000 for doing everything right. I get a brochure for a career counseling because I'm doing everything wrong. The math was simple. The message was clear. You're not worth the investment unless you do what we want. I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the door, stared at myself in the mirror. 24 years old, disappointing my parents, wasting my potential, chasing pipe dreams. I made a vow right there, gripping the edge of the sink. I would build something so successful, so undeniable, that they would have to acknowledge it, that they would have to admit they were wrong about me, that they would have to see me as something other than their failure of a son. I would prove that my way worked, that vision mattered, that building something meaningful was worth more than a steady paycheck. When I came back to the living room, Derek was showing everyone pictures of his new apartment on his phone. 3 bedrooms, Hudson River views, everything I didn't have and couldn't afford. My father saw me and said, "Ryan, you'll call that career service on Monday, right? First thing?" "Sure, Dad," I said. I didn't call them. Instead, I went back to my studio apartment in the Mission and worked for 72 hours straight on my algorithm. I ate pizza, I drank coffee, I didn't sleep.
On December 28th at 3:47 a.m., I pushed the first working version to GitHub. On December 29th, I incorporated Nebula Systems. On December 30th, I emailed Professor Sarah Kim and asked her to look at my code. She wrote back, "This is brilliant, Ryan. Protect it. Copyright everything. Put it in writing that you own this, because the second you start getting traction, people will try to take it from you." I filed the copyright paperwork that day, registered everything in my name, created the license agreement that said Nebula Systems could use the code, but I retained ownership. It was the smartest thing I ever did. 3 months later, I had my first 10,000 users. 6 months after that, my first million. A year after that, venture capitalists were calling me. That's when my father suddenly became interested. He called me one day, 18 months after that Christmas dinner. "Ryan, I've been hearing good things about your company. I think it's time we talked about how I can help." "Help how?" "Investment, advice, connections. I know people, Ryan. I can open doors for you." "I'm doing fine on my own." "I'm sure you are, but imagine how much better you could do with real backing. Let me put together a syndicate. We'll structure it properly, bring in professional management, scale this thing the right way." That's when I made my second mistake. I let him in. I told myself it was about building bridges, about showing him that I'd succeeded, about finally earning his approval. But what it really was about was still, after everything, wanting my father to be proud of me. He invested $5 million, took a board seat, brought in his network, and for a while it worked. We scaled faster, hired better, closed bigger deals. But slowly, subtly, I started losing control. More investors he recommended, more board members he vouched for, more professional management that pushed me out of decisions. And then, 6 months ago, Marcus Thornhill. I should have seen it coming, should have protected myself, should have remembered Professor Kim's warning. But I didn't, because despite everything, I still wanted my father's approval more than I wanted my own autonomy. And now I was paying the price. Sitting in that coffee shop with Jennifer Chen, looking at the copyright documents that would destroy the acquisition, I finally understood what Professor Kim had been trying to tell me. The work was never the thing they wanted from me. The success was never going to be enough, because what they actually wanted was control, obedience, a son who did what he was told. And I'd spent 24 years trying to be that son before I finally gave up and built something real. Now they'd taken that real thing and were selling it out from under me. They'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'd protected it. 7 years ago, when I was young and naive and desperate to prove myself. I'd protected it. And now that protection was about to become their worst nightmare. This is the wound that drives everything, isn't it? The moment you realize that your family's love has conditions, that their approval has a price, and that you'll never be enough unless you become exactly who they want you to be. If you've ever been the black sheep, the disappointment, the one who chose passion over practicality and paid the price for it, I need you to hit that like button. Write, "I chose myself" in the comments. Let's build a community of people who refuse to fit in the boxes their families built for them. After that Christmas dinner, I disappeared into my work. The studio apartment in the Mission became my entire world. 1 room, Murphy bed, desk made from a door and 2 filing cabinets, 3 monitors, terrible lighting, neighbors who played music too loud at 2 a.m. I loved every inch of it. For 6 months, I lived on a budget of $1,800 a month. Rent ate $1,200, food ate $400. The remaining $200 went to AWS hosting costs for my servers. I had no social life, no dating life, no life outside the code. But the code was beautiful. The recommendation engine I'd built wasn't like the others out there. Most recommendation engines optimized for engagement time, keep people clicking, keep them scrolling, keep them addicted. They didn't care what people actually wanted, just what kept them on the platform longest. Mine was different. It optimized for satisfaction, for genuine discovery, for showing people things they didn't know they needed but would actually value. It was harder to build, harder to monetize, but it worked better. By March, I had 10,000 users. By June, 100,000. By September, 1 million. That's when the vultures started circling. First came the acquisition offers. Google wanted to buy the technology for $15 million. Facebook offered $20. I turned them both down. They thought I was crazy. Then came the investors. Sand Hill Road venture capitalists with their term sheets and their promises. Most of them wanted control,
wanted to replace me with experienced management, wanted to pivot the product toward maximum revenue. I turned down 11 offers before I found one that felt right. Catalyst Ventures. Smaller fund, partner named Rachel Torres, who actually understood what I was building. She offered $10 million at a $30 million valuation. Standard terms, no weird control provisions. I took it. The day the money hit my account, I called my father. I don't know why. Maybe I still wanted him to be proud. Maybe I wanted to prove I'd done it without his help. Dad, I closed my Series A, $10 million, $30 million valuation. Silence on the other end. Then, that's great, Ryan. Really, I'm glad you're finding some success. Some success? Well, it's a good start. Now comes the hard part. Scaling, professionalizing, building real infrastructure. That's where most founders fail. I'm not going to fail. Of course not, but you should think about bringing in some adult supervision, someone who's done this before. I know people. Let me make some calls. That should have been my warning. The fact that even a $30 million valuation wasn't enough, that no amount of success would ever make him say, I was wrong about you. But I didn't see it, or didn't want to see it. Over the next year, Nebula Systems grew to 20 employees, then 50, then 120. We launched new features, expanded to new markets. The product got better. The users loved it. But the business side was chaos. I didn't know how to hire executives, didn't know how to structure compensation, didn't know how to manage a board. I was a great engineer and a terrible CEO, and I knew it. That's when my father called again. Ryan, I want to invest $5 million, but more importantly, I want to help you build this the right way. Let me bring in my network, people who know how to scale companies. You focus on product, let them handle the business. I should have said no, should have remembered that Christmas dinner, should have protected myself. But I was 26 and overwhelmed and desperate for help, and he was my father. Surely he wouldn't screw me. Surely he wanted what was best for me.
So I said yes. He invested, joined the board, brought in 3 other board members from his network, all successful, all experienced, all convinced that I needed to be managed. For 2 years, it was fine. We grew. 70 million in revenue, then 150, then 300. We were crushing it. But I was also losing autonomy. Every product decision became a battle. Every hire had to be approved. Every roadmap had to be justified to people who didn't understand the technology and didn't care about the vision. And then came Marcus. My father called me on a Tuesday in January, 6 months ago. Ryan, we need to talk about the CEO position. What about it? You're not scaling. The board agrees. We need someone with enterprise experience, someone who can take us to $1 billion in revenue and beyond. I can do that. Ryan, you're a brilliant technologist, but you're not a CEO. There's no shame in that. Most founders aren't. We're bringing in Marcus Thornhill. He's going to be CEO. You'll stay on as CTO. You'll still have full control over product and technology. And if I say no, then the board will vote you out entirely. This way, you still have a role. You still have equity. You still get to build. But we need professional management. I fought it, screamed at him over the phone, called an emergency board meeting, made my case. But he'd stacked the board. 5 seats. He controlled 3. I lost 3-2. Marcus Thornhill became CEO in February. Within a month, he'd reorganized the entire company, brought in his own team, changed the product roadmap to focus on enterprise clients instead of consumers, started cutting the features I cared about because they didn't generate immediate revenue. By April, I was a CTO in name only, shut out of decisions, overruled on every technical discussion, treated like a junior engineer who didn't understand business. I should have quit, should have walked away, should have let the whole thing burn. But I couldn't, because it was still my company, my code, my vision, and some stupid, desperate part of me still believed I could fix it. That was my final mistake.
On that Tuesday morning in June, when my father announced my termination in that glass conference room, I finally understood. This had been the plan all along. Get me to build something valuable, take control of it, sell it, cut me out, walk away with the money. My father had never wanted me to succeed. He'd wanted to own my success, to turn it into his success, to prove that his way, the ruthless, mercenary, profit-above-all way, was the only way that mattered. And I'd handed it to him, because I was too desperate for his approval to see what he was actually doing. Sitting in ritual coffee with Jennifer Chen, looking at the copyright documents that would blow up the entire acquisition, I finally let go of that desperation. I didn't need his approval. I didn't need his pride. I didn't need him to admit I was right. I just needed him to understand that he'd made a catastrophic mistake. "What's the timeline?" I asked Jennifer. She pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. "Axiom's due diligence is probably already underway. They'll discover the IP issue within 2 weeks if they're competent. That gives us a small window. We have 3 options." "Tell me." "Option 1, we send them a letter right now. Inform them that the core technology is owned by you personally, not by Nebula Systems, that you're revoking the license effective immediately due to your wrongful termination. The acquisition collapses, Axiom walks away, Nebula Systems becomes worthless overnight. Everyone loses." "What's option 2? "We wait until 2 days before closing, send the letter then. Maximum chaos, no time for them to fix it. Same result, but with more panic and more leverage. We negotiate a settlement where you get paid properly for the IP, and they have to eat the embarrassment." "And option 3? Jennifer smiled that predatory smile again. "Option 3 is the fun one. We let the deal close. Don't say anything. Let Axiom pay the $1.2 billion. Let everyone celebrate. And then, 30 days after closing, we file a lawsuit for copyright infringement and breach of contract. We go after Axiom for using your IP without proper license. We go after Nebula Systems for fraudulent misrepresentation. We go after your father and Marcus personally for breach of fiduciary duty. We burn the entire thing to the ground and walk away with everything." I sat back in my chair. "What are the risks with option 3? I asked Jennifer. "Lengthy litigation, years of court battles, lots of legal fees, though I'd take this on contingency because it's a slam dunk. The emotional toll of watching your family try to destroy you in court. But the upside? You could walk away with more than $1 billion, and everyone who screwed you ends up broke and disgraced." I thought about it, about my father's face, about Marcus's smugness, about my mother's patronizing smile. I thought about that Christmas dinner 7 years ago, about Derek getting $50,000 while I got a career counseling brochure. I thought about every time I'd been told I wasn't good enough, that I didn't understand business, that I needed adult supervision. "I want option 3, I said. Jennifer raised her eyebrow. "Ryan, I have to warn you, this is nuclear. This will destroy your relationship with your family permanently. You'll be in litigation for years. The tech community will have opinions. Some people will think you're a hero. Others will think you're a vindictive asshole. Are you absolutely sure?" "I'm sure." "Okay then." She started writing. "We'll need to document everything. Every conversation with your father, every board meeting, every email from Marcus. We'll need to build an airtight case for wrongful termination and fraud. Can you get me access to your company email and records?" "I can do better than that. I've been keeping a personal archive of everything for 7 years. Every code commit, every meeting note, every decision. I documented it all because I knew somewhere in the back of my mind I might need to protect myself someday." "You're more paranoid than I thought." "Professor Kim taught me well." "Who's Professor Kim?" "She's my mentor at Stanford. She's the one who told me to copyright everything personally. She's the one who told me that the second I started getting successful, people would try to take it from me. I should call her, thank her, because she literally saved my life with that advice." Nodded approvingly. "Smart woman. Okay, here's what we do.
You send me everything. I'll start building the case. In the meantime, you do nothing, sign nothing, say nothing. Let the deal proceed. Let them think they won. And when that wire transfer hits their account and they're celebrating in champagne, we hit them with the lawsuit. Sound good? Sounds perfect. We shook hands. She packed up her briefcase and left. I sat there for another hour, drinking coffee, watching people walk past the window. Normal people living normal lives, going to normal jobs, not plotting to destroy billion-dollar acquisitions. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. "Ryan, we need to talk about the transition paperwork. Your father is concerned you haven't signed yet. Please call me." I stared at the message. Then I deleted it. Let them be concerned. Let them wonder. Let them think I was just being difficult. They had no idea what was coming, and I was going to enjoy every second of watching them find out. This is where the real work happens, isn't it? The years of preparation, the documentation, the quiet protection of your work while everyone around you tells you you're being paranoid. If you've ever had to play the long game against people who thought you were too naive to see them coming, hit that like button. Tell me in the comments what's the best advice you ever received that saved you later. Let's celebrate the mentors who taught us to protect ourselves. The next 25 days were theater. I played the part they expected. The disappointed but resigned founder, the idealistic engineer who didn't understand business, the son who'd learned his lesson about biting off more than he could chew. I signed the transition paperwork, all of it, every page, every clause about non-disparagement and confidentiality and intellectual property assignment. That last one was my favorite, the clause that said I assigned all IP to Nebula Systems. I signed it with a smile, knowing it was meaningless. You can't assign something you already assigned with conditions that were now breached, but they didn't know that. They thought the signature meant they owned everything. I attended the farewell lunch they threw for me, sat in a conference room with the executive team while Marcus gave a speech about my foundational contributions and how I'd always be part of the Nebula family. Everyone clapped. Someone gave me a plaque. I smiled, said thank you, shook hands. My father pulled me aside afterward in the hallway. "Ryan, I know this wasn't easy, but you'll see. In a few years, you'll understand this was the right move. You'll start something new, apply what you learned. Maybe this time you'll bring in professional management from the beginning." "Maybe," I said. "And who knows, maybe we'll invest in your next company too." He clapped me on the shoulder. "You're talented, son. You just needed some seasoning, some humility. This experience will make you stronger." I looked at him, really looked at him, saw the complete certainty in his eyes, the absolute conviction that he'd done the right thing, that he'd taught me an important lesson, that I should be grateful. "Thanks, Dad, for everything," I said. He smiled, nodded, walked away.
I went home to my apartment, a much nicer place in Selma now, 2 bedrooms, actual furniture, and sat at my desk, opened my laptop, pulled up the private GitHub repository where I'd been keeping my personal archive. 7 years of commits, thousands of files, complete documentation of every line of code I'd written for Nebula Systems before it was a company. Proof of authorship, proof of copyright, proof of ownership. I'd updated it religiously, every 6 months, added new documentation, new evidence, new timestamps. Professor Kim had taught me that in the technology world, you needed 3 things to prove ownership: first authorship, copyright registration, and a clear paper trail. I had all 3. Jennifer Chen had reviewed everything and called it the most beautiful IP case I've ever seen. I pulled up my email and started reading the updates from the acquisition process. I'd been CC'd on them until my last day, so I had access to everything. The deal was moving forward smoothly. Axiom's due diligence team had reviewed the technology. They'd interviewed the engineering team. They'd analyzed the code base. But they'd made one critical assumption, that the company owned what it was selling. They'd never thought to check the original copyright assignments. Why would they? That's basic stuff. Every startup does it properly. Every founder assigns their IP to the company. Except I hadn't. not unconditionally, and the conditions had just been violated. Day 26 after the announcement, I got an email from Axiom's chief technology officer. He wanted to meet with me. We met at a steakhouse in downtown San Francisco. Alexander Chen, 52 years old, gray hair, sharp eyes, 25 years in enterprise software. He'd built 3 companies from scratch and sold 2 of them. He knew what he was doing. "Ryan," he said, shaking my hand, "thanks for meeting with me. I know you're transitioning out, but I wanted to pick your brain about the core algorithm. Some of my engineers have questions about the architecture." "Happy to help," I said. We ordered, made small talk, then he got to the point. "The recommendation engine," he said. "It's brilliant, genuinely brilliant, best I've seen in 20 years. The way you optimized for satisfaction instead of engagement, that's revolutionary. We're planning to scale it across our entire product line." "That's great. But I need to understand the original implementation, the first version. My team found references in the code to a private repository, Nebula Core Original, but it's not in the company GitHub. Do you know where that is?" My heart rate didn't change. I'd practiced this conversation with Jennifer. "That's my personal archive, from before I incorporated Nebula Systems. I keep it for historical reference." "Would you be willing to share it, for documentation purposes?" "I'd need to check with my lawyer," I said, "but probably not. It's personal work product." He frowned. "Personal work product. I thought all the core technology was developed for the company." "The company was built on technology I developed before the company existed. That's pretty common for startups, right? Founder builds a prototype, then incorporates and licenses it to the company." "Sure, but the IP transfers to the company at incorporation, if it's explicitly assigned, in writing, with the proper legal documentation." Alexander put down his fork, looked at me carefully. "Ryan, did you assign the core algorithm to Nebula Systems?" "I licensed it to Nebula Systems." "Licensed, not assigned." "Correct." "Under what terms?" "That's between me and the company." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and typed something, sent a message to someone. "Excuse me for a second," he said. He stepped away from the table, made a phone call. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I saw his expression change. Concern, then alarm, then something that looked like panic. He came back, sat down. "Ryan, I need you to be straight with me. Do you own the intellectual property that powers Nebula's recommendation engine?" "I own the copyright to the original implementation. Nebula Systems has a license to use it." "Can that license be revoked?" "Under certain conditions, yes." "What conditions?" "I'd need to check with my lawyer." "Is one of those conditions termination without cause?" I smiled. "You'd need to check with my lawyer." Alexander's face went white. "Jesus Christ! Does Marcus know about this?" "I assume Marcus knows the terms of the company's IP agreements. If he doesn't, that seems like a due diligence failure on his part." "This is a $1.2 billion acquisition." "I'm aware. If the core technology isn't owned by the company, then Axiom is about to pay $1.2 billion for a company that doesn't own what it's selling. Yeah, that would be awkward." He stood up. "I need to make some calls." "You haven't touched your steak." "I'm not hungry anymore." He threw $200 bills on the table and left. I finished my meal alone, ordered dessert, took my time. By the time I got home, my phone had 17 missed calls. Marcus, my father, my mother, the board chair, Axiom's CEO, Axiom's general counsel. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I called Jennifer. "They know," I said. "Already? I thought we had another 3 days before closing." "Their CTO is smarter than average. He asked the right questions." "What did you tell him?" "The truth, that I own the IP, that the company has a license, that the license can be revoked." "Did you tell him you're revoking it?" "Nope. Let them sweat." She laughed. "You're enjoying this." "Is that wrong?" "Ethically ambiguous, emotionally understandable, legally irrelevant. What matters is we have them exactly where we want them." "So what's next?" "Now they panic. They'll call emergency board meetings. They'll review the original IP agreements. They'll discover you were telling the truth.
They'll try to figure out if the acquisition can proceed without the core algorithm. It can't. The algorithm is the whole product. Without it, Nebula Systems is worthless. And then they'll call you. They'll beg, they'll threaten, they'll offer you money, they'll try every angle they can think of. And you're going to do exactly what we discussed. Nothing. You're going to let them squirm. For how long? Until they're desperate enough to pay what you're actually worth. That night, I got an email from my father. Subject line, urgent, call me immediately. I deleted it without reading the body. The next morning, Marcus showed up at my apartment building. The doorman called up. Mr. Matthews, there's a Marcus Thornhill here to see you.
Tell him I'm not available. He says it's extremely urgent. Still not available. He's quite insistent, sir. Call the police if he doesn't leave. Marcus left. Day 27. The board called an emergency meeting. I was invited as a courtesy. I declined. Day 28. Axiom's lawyers sent a letter demanding I clarify the IP ownership situation. Jennifer responded with a letter confirming that yes, I owned the copyright, and no, we would not be providing further clarification at this time. Day 29. The deal was supposed to close tomorrow. Axiom sent a letter to Nebula Systems suspending the closing pending resolution of the IP issue. My phone rang. My father. I answered this time. Ryan. His voice was tight, controlled, furious. What the hell are you doing? Hi, Dad. Don't hi, Dad me. Do you have any idea what you've done? You've destroyed a billion-dollar acquisition. You've put the entire company at risk. You've sabotaged your own creation. I haven't sabotaged anything. I'm just clarifying what I own. You don't own anything. You built that algorithm while you were employed by Nebula Systems. Actually, I built it before Nebula Systems existed, in my apartment on my own time, using my own equipment. I incorporated the company 6 months later and licensed the technology to it. You can verify this by checking the copyright registration dates. They're all publicly available. Silence. The license agreement, he said slowly. You're saying you retained ownership. Correct. Under what terms? The license is perpetual and irrevocable unless I'm terminated without cause, which I was, last week, by you. More silence. Then, you planned this. I protected myself 7 years ago on the advice of my mentor, who told me that the second I started getting successful, people would try to take it from me. She was right. Ryan, listen to me very carefully. If you blow up this deal, you will destroy the company. You'll destroy everyone's equity, the employees, the investors, everyone who believed in you. Everyone who believed in me or everyone who believed they could profit from my work. This is not the time for philosophy. This is about real money, real lives, real consequences. You're right, it is. Which is why I'm happy to discuss a resolution as soon as you're ready to negotiate in good faith. Negotiate? What the hell do you want? I want what I'm owed, what I built, what you tried to steal. We didn't steal anything. You fired me from the company I founded so you could sell it without me. You cut me out of a billion-dollar deal with a $2 million severance package. You thought I was too stupid to protect myself. You were wrong. Ryan, leave this to us. Have your lawyers call my lawyer. Her name is Jennifer Chen. I'm sure you can find her contact information. We'll see if we can work something out. I hung up. 15 minutes later, Jennifer called. Your father's legal team just reached out. They want to meet. What do you think? I think we've got them scared. Let's see how scared. We met the next morning in a conference room at Jennifer's law firm. My father, Marcus, their general counsel, Axiom CEO Robert Palmieri, who'd flown in from New York overnight, Axiom's general counsel, 7 lawyers total on their side. Jennifer and me on ours. Let's get to it, Robert Palmieri said. He was 60 years old, ex-Marine, built like a tank. He'd built Axiom from nothing to a $20 billion company. He didn't waste time on proletaries. You own the algorithm, we get it. What do you want? I want a fair deal. Define fair. I want what the technology is actually worth. The acquisition price is $1.2 billion. You own 12% of Nebula Systems. That's $144 million. Seems fair to me. That's what my equity is worth. I'm not talking about my equity.
I'm talking about my intellectual property. The algorithm is the entire product. Without it, Nebula Systems is worthless. So the algorithm isn't 12% of 1.2 billion, it's 1.2 billion. The room erupted. Everyone started talking at once. Robert Palmieri held up a hand. Silence. You want $1.2 billion for a piece of code? For 7 years of work, for the foundation of a company, for the technology that powers everything Axiom wants to buy. Yes. That's insane. Then don't buy it. We've already committed to the acquisition. That's your problem. My father jumped in. Ryan, be reasonable. You can't seriously expect. I can expect whatever I want. You threw me out. You sold my company without me. You thought I was too stupid to protect myself. You were wrong. Marcus leaned forward. This is extortion. No, this is negotiation. Extortion would be if I demanded money to not destroy something that's yours. But the algorithm is mine, not yours. I'm offering to let you use it for a price. We'll sue you. Go ahead. I'll countersue for fraudulent misrepresentation to Axiom. You told them you owned the technology. You don't. That's fraud. You'll lose. And even if you somehow win, the litigation will take years. Axiom will walk away. The company will collapse, and everyone loses, except me, because I still own the algorithm. I can license it to anyone I want. Maybe I'll license it to one of Axiom's competitors instead. Robert Palmieri looked at me for a long time. Then he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile, but it was a respectful one. You're better at this than your father thought. I had good teachers. Here's my counteroffer. We'll pay you $200 million, separately from the acquisition, personal payment for the IP rights, full assignment, clean transfer. You walk away, we close the deal, everyone wins. Except I don't get what it's worth. Life's not fair, kid. You're right, it's not. Which is why I'm not accepting less than $800 million. 800? You said 1.2. I did, but I'm willing to negotiate. 800 million, immediate payment, full IP transfer, and I want it in writing that you're acquiring the technology from me, not from Nebula Systems. I want everyone to know that the company didn't own it, that I did. My father's face went purple. You want to humiliate us. I want the truth documented. There's a difference. Robert thought about it, looked at his lawyers, had a whispered conversation, then he turned back to me. 500 million, final offer. Take it or we walk, and you can watch the company you built die. I looked at Jennifer. She nodded slightly. 650, and you announce publicly that the core technology was acquired separately from the company. Press release, SEC filing, the whole thing. 600, and we mention the separate acquisition, but keep the details confidential. 625, details in the SEC filing, but not in the press release. Robert smiled again, held out his hand. Deal. We shook. My father stood up and walked out of the room without saying a word. This is where the tables turned completely, where the person who was dismissed, underestimated, and thrown away becomes the one holding all the cards. If you've ever had to negotiate with people who thought you had no leverage, hit that like button. Tell me in the comments, what's the most satisfying, actually I have the upper hand moment you've ever experienced? Let's celebrate the wins. The wire transfer hit my account on a Friday afternoon at 3:47 p.m. $625 million. I was sitting in my apartment when the notification came through, just sitting there on my couch, laptop open, staring at nothing in particular. The number appeared on my screen, and for a moment I couldn't process it. All those zeros, more money than my parents had made in their entire lives combined, more money than I'd ever imagined having. I closed the laptop, walked to the window, looked out at San Francisco spreading below me, the city where I'd rebuilt myself from nothing, and I felt nothing, empty, like I'd just climbed a mountain only to discover there was nothing at the top. My phone rang. Jennifer Chen. Did you see it? Yeah. How do you feel? I don't know. That's normal. Give it time. She paused. The press releases go out in an hour. Axiom's announcement, the SEC filing, everything. Are you ready for the shitstorm? As ready as I'll ever be. I know. But did I?
I just extracted $625 million from a deal that would have made my parents and their investors hundreds of millions of dollars. I'd blown up their triumphant exit. I'd exposed their failure to do basic due diligence. I'd humiliated them in front of the entire tech industry. And I felt nothing.
At 5 p.m., the press releases went out. My phone started buzzing immediately. Text messages, calls, emails, LinkedIn notifications, Twitter mentions. I turned it all off. At 6:30 p.m., someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole. My father. I should have ignored it, should have let him stand there, but curiosity won. I opened the door. He looked terrible. His perfect silver hair was disheveled. His $5,000 suit was rumpled. His face was gray, drawn, like he'd aged 10 years in the past 3 hours. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. He walked into my apartment slowly, looking around like he was seeing it for the first time. The minimalist furniture, the wall of books, the desk with 3 monitors, the life I'd built without his help. "Nice place," he said quietly. "Thanks." We stood there in awkward silence, 2 men who shared DNA and decades of history, but had no idea how to talk to each other. Finally, he said, $625 million. "Yes. You destroyed me, Ryan. You know that, right? You didn't just take money. You destroyed my reputation. Every investor I've ever worked with now knows I failed to do basic IP due diligence. Every company I've ever advised now questions my competence. You ended my career." "You destroyed yourself," I said evenly. "You fired me from the company I founded. You tried to sell technology you didn't own. You assumed I was too stupid to protect myself. Those were your choices, not mine. I was trying to help you. Help me. You were trying to control me. There's a difference." He laughed bitterly. "Control you? Ryan, I was trying to save you from yourself. You're brilliant, but you have no business sense. You would have run that company into the ground within 2 years. I brought in professional management. I structured a deal that would have made you $140 million, and you threw it all away because of what? Pride? Revenge? Self-respect," I said. "I threw it away because you didn't respect me. You never have." "That's not true." "It is true. Dad, when have you ever in my entire life told me I was doing something right? When have you ever supported a decision I made without trying to change it or fix it or improve it? When have you ever just said, 'I'm proud of you, son,' without adding a but?" He opened his mouth, closed it, couldn't answer. "That Christmas dinner, 7 years ago, Derek got $50,000 for buying an apartment. I got a career counseling brochure for being unemployed. You handed me that brochure, and you looked at me like I was a failure, like I was embarrassing you, like I would never amount to anything unless I did exactly what you wanted. You were wasting your potential. I was building Nebula. I already incorporated the company. I already had users. I was already on my way. But you couldn't see it because it didn't fit your definition of success. So you decided I needed to be fixed. And you spent the next 7 years trying to fix me by taking away everything I built. I invested $5 million in your company. You bought control of my company. There's a difference. You didn't invest because you believed in me. You invested because you wanted to own me, to prove that you were right and I was wrong, to turn my success into your success. That's not—" He stopped, ran his hair through his hair, sat down heavily on my couch. "Jesus, Ryan, is that really what you think?" "It's what I know." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, very softly, "You're right." I blinked. "What?" "You're right, about all of it. I never believed you could succeed on your own. I thought you needed me. I thought that if I could just push you hard enough, control you enough, shape you enough, you'd become successful. And you did become successful, but not because of me, in spite of me. And I hated that. I hated that you proved me wrong. I hated that you did it your way and it worked."
I stood very still, not trusting this sudden vulnerability. "So I took it from you," he continued. "I told myself I was professionalizing the company. I told myself I was helping you scale. But what I was really doing was punishing you for succeeding without me, for not needing me, for being better than me. Dad, and then you protected yourself. You were smarter than me. You saw it coming 7 years before it happened. You protected your work, and when I tried to steal it, you stopped me. You didn't just stop me, you destroyed me, publicly, completely. You did to me what I've spent my entire career doing to other people." He looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen in my father's eyes. Not anger, not disappointment, respect. "You're a better businessman than I ever was," he said, "because you understood the one thing I never learned. You can't build something real by controlling people. You can only build it by empowering them. And when you try to take what someone else built, eventually they'll take it back." I sat down across from him. "What happens now?" "Now? Now I'm finished. The investors want me out. The board of my PE firm voted to remove me this afternoon. My mother," she laughed humorlessly, "your mother told me I got exactly what I deserved. She's filing for divorce next week." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. She's right. I destroyed everything. My career, my marriage, my relationship with both my sons, all because I couldn't admit that my way wasn't the only way." "Derek talked to you?" "Derek told me to go fuck myself. Said he wasted 20 years of his life trying to be what I wanted, and he's done. He quit Goldman. Did you know that?" "Yeah." "Derek is working for you now, isn't he?" "He is." My father nodded slowly. "Good. He should. He should work somewhere he actually believes in the mission, somewhere his boss actually values him." He stood up. "I should go." "Dad, wait." He turned back. "I didn't do this to destroy you. I did it to protect myself, to get what I earned, to prove that I'm not the failure you always thought I was. I never thought you were a failure, Ryan. I thought you were better than me, and I spent your entire life trying to cut you down to my size because I couldn't stand being smaller than my own son." He walked to the door, paused. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. I know I never said it. I know it doesn't matter anymore, but I'm proud of you. You built something revolutionary. You protected it. You won. You're everything I pretended to be." He left. I sat there for a long time after he was gone, processing what had just happened. My father had admitted he was wrong, had admitted I was better, had given me the validation I'd spent 31 years desperately wanting, and it felt like nothing, because I'd already moved past needing it. The next morning, I woke up to 3,000 unread emails, interview requests, investment offers, people wanting a piece of whatever I did next. I ignored all of them, except one. From Professor Sarah Kim. Subject, well played. "Ryan, I saw the news. I have only one question. Did you learn everything I taught you, or did you come up with some of that brilliance on your own? Either way, I'm proud of you. You protected your work. You stood up for yourself. You proved that integrity and self-protection aren't mutually exclusive. Now comes the hard part, figuring out what you actually want to build, not to prove anything, not to show anyone, just to build. When you're ready to talk about that, call me. Also, I'm teaching a seminar on founder IP protection next semester. Would you be willing to guest lecture? The students should hear from someone who actually did it right."
I called her that afternoon. "Professor Kim, Ryan Matthews, congratulations on becoming the most expensive IP lesson in Silicon Valley history." I laughed, actually laughed, first time in weeks. "Is that what I am now?" "That's what you've always been. The question is whether you're going to spend the rest of your life being a cautionary tale or an example." "What's the difference?" "A cautionary tale is someone who won and stopped. An example is someone who won and kept building. Which are you?" I thought about it, about the $625 million sitting in my account.
about the fact that I could retire right now and never work another day in my life, about the emptiness I'd felt when that wire transfer hit. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "Good. Not knowing is the beginning of wisdom. Come talk to my class next month. By then you'll have an answer." "How do you know?" "Because you're not the type to sit still. You're a builder. Builders build. The only question is what." She was right, of course. I spent the next 2 weeks in a fog, sleeping late, watching too much TV, ordering takeout, avoiding calls, avoiding decisions, avoiding the question of what came next. On the 16th day, Derek showed up at my apartment. "You look like shit," he said, walking past me into the living room. "Thanks. When's the last time you showered?" "Yesterday, I think." "When's the last time you left this apartment?" "I don't know, 4 days, 5? He looked at me like I was a patient in a hospital. "Ryan, you just won. Why are you acting like you lost?" "I don't know." "Bullshit. You know exactly why. You spent 7 years fighting for validation from people who were never going to give it to you, and now you got it, and it doesn't fix anything. So you're lost because you don't know who you are when you're not fighting for David Matthews." I stared at him. "I'm in therapy now," he said, 3 sessions a week. My therapist is helping me figure out who I am when I'm not performing for Dad. It's hard, it's terrible, but it's necessary." He sat down across from me. "You need to do the same thing. You need to figure out who Ryan Matthews is when he's not trying to prove David Matthews wrong." "I don't know how." "Start by asking yourself, what do you actually want to build? Not what would make Dad respect you, not what would prove you're smart. What do you want to build because it matters to you?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "I want to build technology that helps people," I said slowly. "Not technology that extracts value from them, not technology that optimizes for engagement or addiction or profit, technology that actually solves real problems." "Okay, that's a start. What kind of problems?" "Education, I think. The way we learn is broken. It's optimized for standardization instead of understanding, for memorization instead of critical thinking. I want to build something that changes that." Derek smiled. "There it is. That's the Ryan I remember, the one who cares about making things better, not just making things profitable." "But I don't know if I can do it," I admitted. "Building Nebula almost destroyed me. The fight with Dad did destroy me. What if I build something new and the same thing happens?" "Then you protect yourself better. You set boundaries earlier. You don't let investors control you. You build it the right way from the beginning." He leaned forward. "Ryan, you're worth $625 million. You don't need investors. You don't need your parents. You don't need anyone's approval. You can build exactly what you want, exactly how you want. That's freedom. Don't waste it hiding in this apartment feeling sorry for yourself." He was right. I knew he was right. "Will you help me?" "Help me build an education company? I don't know anything about education." "You know about operations, about scaling, about the business side. And unlike Dad, you actually care about building something meaningful." He thought about it. "What's the mission?" "To prove that you can build a successful technology company without compromising your values, without exploiting users, without sacrificing integrity for profit." "And we think we can do that?" "I think we have to try, because if we don't, who will?" Derek stood up, held out his hand. "Okay, I'm in. Let's build something that matters." I shook his hand. For the first time since the wire transfer hit, I felt something other than emptiness. I felt purpose. This is the moment where winning stops being enough, where you realize that revenge doesn't heal wounds, it just creates new ones. Where you have to decide, are you going to spend the rest of your life being defined by what was done to you, or are you going to build something new? If you've ever had to find yourself after achieving everything you thought you wanted, hit that like button. Drop "purpose over revenge" in the comments. Let's build a tribe of people who chose meaning over victory.
3 years after the wire transfer that changed everything, I stood on stage at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. A packed auditorium of students, faculty, and tech industry leaders watched as Professor Sarah Kim adjusted her microphone. "Today's guest needs no introduction," she said, smiling at me. "Forbes 40 Under 40, the Wall Street Journal's Education Disruptor of the Year, and the subject of my favorite case study on intellectual property protection. Please welcome Ryan Matthews, founder and CEO of Lumina Learning." The applause was generous, respectful, nothing like the fawning adulation that greets founders who've made quick billions by exploiting user data or creating addictive platforms. This was something better, something I'd earned. "Thank you, Professor Kim," I said, taking the podium. 3 years ago, I sat in her office, completely lost. I had $625 million in my bank account and absolutely no idea what to do with my life. Laughter rippled through the audience. I had won, you see. I had proven my father wrong. I had protected my work. I had gotten what I thought I always wanted: validation, vindication, and a very large sum of money. I paused, looking out at the sea of faces. And I discovered that winning doesn't fix anything. Revenge doesn't heal wounds. Money doesn't create purpose. The room was silent now. Professor Kim asked me a simple question that day. What do you want to build because it matters to you? Not to prove someone wrong, not to get rich, not to be famous, but because it matters. I clicked a button, and behind me, the Lumina Learning logo appeared on the massive screen. What mattered to me was education, the democratization of learning, the idea that technology should serve human potential, not exploit it, that a recommendation algorithm could connect people with knowledge they needed rather than content that triggered engagement, that we could build something profitable and ethical at the same time. I clicked again, showing our growth metrics: 2 million users, 127 countries, adoption by schools, universities, and individuals seeking self-directed learning, revenue that had doubled every quarter for 11 consecutive quarters. Lumina isn't the biggest education platform in the world. We're not the most profitable. We don't have the most users or the highest valuation, but we're building something that matters, something sustainable, something I can look at every day and know that we're making lives better, not worse. I advanced to the next slide, showing our team structure. We built Lumina differently from the beginning. My brother Derek handles operations. Our equity structure ensures no single investor can force decisions. Our terms of service explicitly prohibits selling user data. Our algorithm is designed to optimize for learning outcomes, not screen time. We're proving every day that you can build a successful technology company without compromising your soul. The next slide showed our executive team: Derek, Professor Kim, who had joined as Chief Learning Officer, Jennifer Chen, our Chief Legal Officer, a diverse group of educators, engineers, and business leaders who shared our vision. But the biggest lesson I've learned isn't about business models or equity structures or IP protection. It's about identity, about purpose, about understanding that your work should be an expression of your values, not a referendum on your worth. I took a breath, preparing for the hardest part of my talk. Many of you know the story of how I got here, how my parents pushed me out of my first company, how I extracted hundreds of millions when they tried to sell it. It made great headlines: Founder's Revenge, the $625 million mistake. All the tech blogs loved it. I clicked to the next slide, a photo I'd never shown publicly before. My father, sitting in Lumina's office, gray-haired and simpler dressed than I'd ever seen him in my childhood,
reviewing code with one of our senior engineers. The audience murmured in surprise. What they don't know is what happened after. How my father lost everything, his business, his reputation, his marriage. How he spent 6 months in what he later called the wilderness of his own making. How he called me a year after everything fell apart and asked if he could buy me coffee. I remembered that day perfectly. The coffee shop in the Mission, not far from where I'd built the original Nebula algorithm. My father, looking older, humbler, his expensive suit replaced by chinos and a button-down shirt that hadn't been tailored to perfection. He didn't ask for money, didn't ask for a job, didn't ask for forgiveness. He asked for a chance to understand what I was building, to see it through my eyes instead of his. He said, and I quote, "I spent 30 years telling you to see the world. I'd like to spend whatever time I have left learning to see it through your eyes instead." I clicked to the next slide. My father and me standing in front of Lumina's first office on launch day. I didn't trust him at first, but Professor Kim gave me some advice. She said, "People can change when the cost of staying the same becomes too high." My father had paid that cost. He'd lost everything. And in that loss, he found something valuable: humility. The next slide showed my father in the Lumina staff kitchen making coffee for the engineering team during a late-night coding session. He started as a consultant, worked harder than anyone to prove his worth, not to rebuild his fortune or his reputation, but to understand what I had been trying to tell him for years, that business could be more than profit, that success could be measured in impact, not just dollars. I clicked again. My father with a group of high school students in Oakland, teaching a class on financial literacy as part of Lumina's community outreach program. Today, my father runs our foundation, the part of Lumina that ensures our platform reaches students who can't afford technology, schools without resources, communities without access. He takes no salary, lives in a modest apartment, drives a 10-year-old car, and he's happier than I've ever seen him. I paused, letting that sink in. I tell you this not because it's a neat, happy ending. Our relationship is still complicated. There are still hard conversations and old wounds that haven't fully healed. I tell you this because it's the most important business lesson I've ever learned. People can change. Organizations can evolve. Success can be redefined. The final slide showed Lumina's mission statement: building technology that serves human potential, not exploits it. 3 years ago, I won. I got the money, the validation, the victory, and it meant nothing. Today, I'm building something that matters, something larger than my ego or my bank account or my need for revenge, and it means everything. I looked out at the audience, at the future entrepreneurs and business leaders who would shape technology for the next generation. You will face choices in your careers, moments where the easy path is to optimize for profit over people, where the tempting path is to build what makes money rather than what creates value, where the safe path is to follow existing models rather than create better ones. I stepped away from the podium, wanting these final words to feel personal, direct. I'm asking you to make harder choices, to protect your work, yes, but more importantly, to build work worth protecting, to create technology that solves real problems, not imaginary ones, to build companies where success is measured by impact, not just exits. The applause started slowly, then built. Not the frenzied adulation of a tech conference, but something more meaningful, something earned. After the talk, as students lined up to ask questions, I saw my father standing at the back of the auditorium. He wasn't approaching, wasn't drawing attention to himself, just watching, a small smile on his face. Professor Kim noticed him too. "He comes to all your talks," she said quietly. "I know. He never tells you." "No. That's growth," she observed, "for both of you." I nodded, watching as he slipped out the side door. We had dinner plans later that week, a standing appointment every Wednesday, sometimes awkward, sometimes healing, always necessary. The last student in line finally reached me, a young woman with determined eyes and a well-worn laptop covered with stickers. "Mr. Matthews, your story is amazing," she said, "but I have one question. Was it worth it? The fight with your family, the legal battle, everything you went through?" I considered the question carefully. The battle itself? No, that almost destroyed me. But what came after? Learning who I am without my father's approval or disapproval defining me? Building something that matches my values instead of someone else's expectations? Finding purpose beyond revenge? I smiled. That's been worth everything. She nodded, understanding. "Then I have one more question," she said. "I'm building something too, something I believe matters, but my family thinks I'm wasting my time. My professors think I'm being idealistic. The investors I've talked to want me to pivot to something more commercially viable." "And your question is?" "How do I know if I should keep going, if what I'm building is worth the fight?" I thought about my father standing at the back of the auditorium, about Derek running operations for a company so different from what he'd been trained to value at Goldman Sachs, about my mother who had slowly, cautiously rebuilt a relationship with me after her divorce, learning to see me as a person rather than an extension of her expectations. "Ask yourself this," I said finally. "If no one ever recognized your work, if you never got rich or famous or validated, would you still believe in what you're building? Would it still matter to you? Would you still be proud of how you built it?" She didn't answer immediately, thought about it, then nodded slowly. "Yes," she said, "I would." "Then it's worth it," I told her. "Not because of what you might gain, but because of who you become in the process. The person who builds something that matters will always be richer than the person who builds something that merely pays." I watched her walk away, laptop clutched to her chest, determination in her stride. 3 years ago, I'd been consumed by the need to prove my father wrong, to show him and everyone else that I was worthy of respect, of recognition, of value. Now I understood the truth that Professor Kim had been trying to teach me from the beginning. Your work isn't valuable because other people recognize it. It's valuable because you poured yourself into it, because it represents your best effort to leave the world better than you found it. That evening, as I packed up my presentation materials, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Proud of you today. Not because of what you've built, but because of why you built it. See you Wednesday." I smiled, pocketed my phone, and headed for the exit. Tomorrow, we'd keep building, keep improving, keep refining our mission and our methods. Not to prove anyone wrong, not to get revenge, not to become billionaires, but because it mattered. And that, I had finally learned, was worth more than any exit, any validation, or any victory could ever be.